Welcome, everybody. We will get started in a few minutes. Nice to see so many current NYU LA students here, as well as some people that we don't know, but we'll give it 5 minutes before we get going. We really need some music. But we could take the moment to acknowledge our land acknowledgement, which is on the screen. This is something that we've recently added to our slides. So I'll just take a moment to read it while we're letting people in. The land in which NYU Los Angeles resides on is a part of the ancient traditional territory and homeland of the Gabrielino, Tongva, Kiz, and Chumash people. We respect the past, present, and future and continuing presence of the, I'm sure I'm pronouncing things wrong, but Gabrielino, Tongva, Kiz, and Chumash people, and acknowledge that this institution, along with many others, was founded on the exclusions and erasures of Indigenous people. As a multicultural educational institution, we voice our commitment to educating ourselves and those around us in the history of settler colonialism and working to overcome its effect in our own institutions. So thank you all for allowing me to share that with you. And I think what we will do is get started. Well, let's give it a couple more minutes. People are still coming in. Hi, Hermione. Nice to see you again. Or Hermione. Nice to see you again. And I know you've attended a number of our events, so nice to see you. And Hallie and Maggie, and Sophia, you get delighted. Okay, I'm going to get us started by first just introducing the remarkable James Clements, who's going to be leading this workshop today. I want to thank him very, very much for his time and efforts in putting this together. And I want to thank you all for attending. And I'm going to introduce him, and I will then leave it to James if he wants to have you turn on your cameras, because I know this is not a webinar, it's an interactive workshop, so it should be of actually even greater value to you than a traditional webinar. So let me tell you a little about James. He is a very talented multi-hyphenate. I get exhausted just reading his bio. He is an actor, a writer, a director, producer, arts educator, and media professional based between New York and Scotland, and you will soon get to hear his delicious Scottish burr. He's performed at many venues and has worked on the creative team at projects at Lincoln Center, The Public, the 92nd Street Y. He's written an enormous, beautiful number of original plays, including the Diana Tapes, Four Sisters, Beauty Freak, and Medea Brittany, Guac, Ellis Island. And I hear just some of the accolades that have been handed to his work: magnifying, intricate, compelling, affecting, and intellectual. So now we got to watch out for him. He's also a teacher. He's taught at CUNY Queens College and at the Wuhan Institute of Design and Science. And he is an affiliated instructor at NYU Tisch. He's also the co-producing art director of What Will the Neighbors Say, which I love the name of that organization, a Brooklyn-based theater company with a mission to provoke questions through untold stories. And he's co-produced and co-presented a ton of work there. I know he's going to talk a little bit more about his work in the course of the presentation. So I am going to end here and turn it over to James. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nina. Let me just share screen, kick us off. All right. So yeah, thank you so much, Nina. Hello, folks. Welcome to Personal Branding and the Freelance Arts Career. As Nina said, my name is James Clements. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm calling in to you folks this evening from Brooklyn, which is very, very cold, and I'm very, very jealous that I'm not over with you in the West Coast. Brooklyn is the unceded land of the Lenape people. As you can probably hear, and as Nina said, Scotland is home for me. But I live between Scotland and the US for the last 10 years. I came over to New York in the first place to go to Tish, as I'll get into a little bit. But yeah, thank you so much for having me this evening. Thank you for showing up. We're on Zoom a lot for work and for play, so I don't take it lightly that you decided to jump on for an extra 90 minutes with me. And I'm really excited to dive in with this group. So first and foremost, for the purpose of our work here tonight, I'm a freelancer, which is a career direction or career shape that I imagine a lot of you are either already doing or are considering. And I've been doing it since I graduated from Tisch back in 2014. As Nina said, I'm an actor, writer, director, producer, and arts educator. I've also freelanced as a development producer for television. I've worked with global media companies like Red Arrow International and Cineflix Media, co-founding artistic director of What Will the Neighbors Say, a Brooklyn-based theatre company with a mission to provoke questions through untold stories. We founded our company in 2016, actually all folks that met at NYU Tisch. So I always say on these lectures or any lectures, think of your classmates as your future collaborators because they probably will be. So we're in the middle right now of our 6th season, which is a bit mad, but very exciting. And I say all of this because I feel really fortunate to have had quite a varied and diverse career so far. And I think between it all, I've really learned, or I'm in the sort of lifelong process of learning, the importance of balancing all of these different elements of my professional life and finding a way, a vocabulary and a way of talking about myself, my work, my projects in what I hope, is a clear, confident way. And I would like to say, take this moment to say that is not something that came naturally to me, believe it or not. I know I can talk a mile a minute now, but it was something I really had to work at, and I'm still working on it now. And that's what we're going to all kind of be doing together tonight. So this session is going to focus on some of the challenges faced by early career artists, creatives, and other freelancers. We'll focus on the importance of building a strong personal brand, navigating meaningful networking, and balancing all of the different creative hats that we all wear. Hence the cutesy hat graphic, which I took as a note from my girlfriend who said the presentation looked too dry. So that's why that's there. You can thank her for that. So a little more context on my journey to NYU and into a freelance career, because a lot of the teaching that I do, I feel I can only teach from my own experience. So just to give enough context for, I hope, the work to make sense. Born and raised in Glasgow, Scotland, spent secondary school there. And then I spent my freshman year actually at the NYU London program doing liberal studies. I had my moment in senior year of high school where I was like, no, fuck drama. Like I didn't like, this is not what I want to do. And so I was like, I'm going to go to college for various other things. And, within about 6 weeks, I was like, no, I want to be an artist. I want to be a creative. So I came over to Tisch in New York. I studied the experimental theater wing, and I double majored also in history, which has turned out to be very central to a lot of the arts work that I do and the teaching work I do. I started freelancing in theater when I graduated in 2014. And since then, I've been combining my acting work with writing, directing, teaching, and producing, trying to kind of keep all those plates in the air at once, which again, I'm sure a lot of folks on here tonight can relate to. And as I mentioned, I formed my theater company in 2016. In 2018, I moved into development producing for television. And again, I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted here, but for anyone who doesn't know, that role effectively combines generating new ideas in the scripted and unscripted spaces and getting them through the development pipeline until they're, hopefully commissioned. And I'm also, I have this kind of arts education career. I teach at CUNY, where my company's artist in residence at the moment. We're also adjunct faculty at the Wuhan Institute of Design and Science, as Nina said, and I'm an affiliated instructor right here at Tisch. And I also work with younger students through my company's initiative, What Will the Kids Say, and through the Town Hall Arts Education System. And doing all that, crazy kind of cacophony of career stuff that I've chosen. I split my time between New York and the UK on an O1 visa. And so if there's anyone here who is an international student who needs to talk about O1 stuff, please hit me up afterwards. I've been through the fire 3 times, so I'm very happy to help in any way I can. So on top of kind of trying to keep all these plates in the air, I'm trying to develop professional identities in 2 different locations, which I feel like is very common for folks in our field, whether it's LA, New York, Atlanta, New York. It's kind of yet another wild card factor in the freelance life. And here's the kicker: some months I still worry about rent. That's the nature of freelancing, especially in the first era of your professional life. And I feel that what sets artists or creatives or media folks like us apart is the boldness and the self-belief and the commitment to your work to kind of ride out those lean times and stay focused. But I just want to put that out there for full transparency. I'm not coming to this group as having all the solutions. I've just been able to develop certain, shall we say, professional coping mechanisms, and I think that they are useful because being a freelancer is really difficult at times, and especially in the creative industries even more so. So what are some of the challenges that come with freelancing? So, as we know, the arts and media industries are often low paying, especially in the beginning. Inherently, freelance work is gig based. It's never guaranteed. It swings wildly from month to month. It's like the expression I think my grandmother always said, that you wait for a bus for like 45 minutes and then 3 buses come in the space of 5 minutes. That is the kind of maddening nature of freelance work. And the balance that you have to strike between making the work that you studied, that you love, that you're good at, and making a living, unless you're extremely lucky, meteorically lucky, they're unlikely to always be the same thing at the beginning of your career, though hopefully that shifts as you go. Someone I'm working with on a show right now said something I thought was really funny, that their manager said to them that either you become famous before you're 17 or after you're 27. The middle is just no chance, which made me laugh a lot. I don't know if it's totally true, but it is that it usually takes some time to get yourself established in your field. Which brings us on to our last point. That time required to become established and stand out can be frustrating, can be difficult, can be economically prohibitive, depending on your field and your situation. And then even once you start making your way through it, the success you're having can sometimes take some time to translate into the money you deserve to be paid. Can anyone think of any others they would want to share? I don't know if we want to do a raised hand function, or if people just want to unmute. I think we're a small enough group. Okay, maybe I got them all. So what can you do about it as a freelancer in terms of being empowered in your own career and your own work? That's what we're hopefully going to start looking at together this evening. The beginning is a bit more of a lecture-based presentation, and then hopefully in the second half we'll be hearing from you folks, and you'll be doing some writing and generating solo and as a group. Okay, so the main thing we're here to talk about tonight that you can develop free or incredibly cheaply is a strong personal brand. Especially when you're working on a ton of different projects or across a ton of different disciplines. You want to have a really clear professional narrative that is digestible to folks that aren't in our field, or digestible to folks that don't have a maybe detailed understanding of how they intersect. You know it, right? But how do you communicate it to other people? First up, as I'm sure so many of you are already doing, but I do think can be easy to forget, build your online brand. Again, free or very cheap. You should have a website with, that looks great. I am no tech person at all, and I was able to pull my website together using a template or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Just something that looks sleek and professional and looks like you and looks like the energy of working with you. Because I feel like that's what people really look for. LinkedIn, whatever social media, if that's your thing, it's not for everyone. A Vimeo of your work samples. Look, people in creative fields look each other up all the time. In my company, it's the first thing we do when we get a actor submission or a producer submission. We will look the person up online. So you want to be present in that space. Keep your language and your visual identity cohesive in your online promotion as much as possible. Have your LinkedIn make sense with your website and your social media, and trying to make sure that that identity tracks with your work and professional preferences. Next, it sounds, again, really redundant, but I do think sometimes the simplest things when we're in a kind of freelance spiral are the easiest to forget. Know who you are and what you do. This is completely free, but isn't always particularly easy. But it really is as can be as simple as describing yourself as who you really are, right? So you're a journalist and not a bartender, unless you are passionate about bartending, and that's great. But assuming you're not, then I think that is something that we as creatives, especially early career creatives, very often sell ourselves short on. I can't tell you the number of friends and colleagues of mine, which I'm sure you guys have all experienced too, that kind of shrug when they describe themselves as an actor, or look at the floor when they say they're a director or a writer. Somehow there's a sense of apologizing for what we do, or not wanting to take space we don't feel we've earned. But that's not a feeling that I feel like anyone should have, especially people that are brave enough to freelance in the fields that we do. So yeah, never apologize for what you do. And anytime you waver or it feels like it'd be easier to retreat, just remember that this person, you want them to remember you for the work that you do, and that's the credit you deserve. And then next up is the personal log line, I call it. This is free, and I think super important. Again, as a lot of you NYU LA folks undoubtedly know, log line started as a sentence or two that sums up a film. But I kind of love the idea. A professor actually at NYU described it as a personal log line, and I think that that's been really useful for me. This is the language you would want to have ready at some fabulous cocktail party or show opening or reception, where you might only get 30 seconds with this person, and you don't want to waste any of that time babbling as the crucial seconds slip away from you. Your log line is basically a quick summary of who you are professionally, which is the most important thing, but ideally imbibed with a kind of a dash of your personality. Mine's here as an example. So I would say, hi, I'm James Clements. I'm a Scottish actor, writer, director, and producer based between New York and the UK. In a nutshell, I find untold stories and I tell them. How are you? Right? So in the space of 13 seconds, I think that was about 13 seconds, anyone I'm meeting now has a lot of information on what I do, a sense maybe of why I do what I do, and also some understanding of who I am and how I identify as a person. And later in this session, one of the writing exercises we're actually going to do is everyone is going to draft a log line and hopefully share them. And we'll break it down a little bit, the kind of the different ingredients of it when we get there. The next thing that I think is a big part of personal branding for freelancers and for anyone in general, is navigating meaningful networking. And I'm sure, again, we've all heard the expressions. It's not what you know, it's who you know. You got to network to get work. It's a little bit exaggerated, sure, but as a freelancer and especially as an artist, I've found that the network I've created has led directly to the work I do and the collaborators I do it with. And I would imagine that will be similar for all of you folks. The more you get to know people and the more meaningfully you get to know them, the more often you will come to their mind when they're trying to find someone to recommend for something or someone for them to get advice from. So it's sort of about, I think, creating a professional ecosystem that you find your place in. So understanding, it helps you understand your field, and it also helps you understand your positionality as a freelancer. So how do we do it? The first thing I really recommend, I know this is students and alumni, but I heard from Nina, a lot of students are here. Maintain meaningful contacts with your mentors, professors, and teachers. This is completely free. And I really mean it. Like literally first thing tomorrow morning, send, polite, clear emails asking people for Zoom coffee, for advice, for project feedback. I actually think one saving grace of Zoom is it's so much easier now for people to give you half an hour of their time versus having to, especially in LA, drive across the city to have a coffee with someone. The fact that that's no longer a mandatory part of this, I think, is a huge benefit for our generation of emerging artists. I feel like in my experience, these folks are probably going to say yes. And they're probably going to remember you in the future if someone does ask them for a recommendation for an assistant director or a great young actor. It's also a way to get folks in your corner to help you navigate your career. They're going to share invaluable insights and advice with you. So yeah, something completely free that I would challenge each of you, including myself, to do tomorrow. Next up, again, free, asking to shadow, observe, visit people you admire at work. Reach out and ask if you can join them in the rehearsal room or on set or in the studio, wherever they are doing their craft. I found that this type of shadowing allows you to gain crucial insights into the industry of your choice. And at the end of the day, folks, once you're in that room taking notes and observing, I'm sure you're all wonderful at what you do. You're going to inevitably end up having conversations with other people that are there. So in that sense, it's both an apprenticeship and also a chance for you to flex how excellent you are and how they should work with you in the future. And it doesn't have maybe some of the weight or pressure of an internship with all the ethics of those that are shifting, I think, all the time, but really just saying, I'm a new director, I've loved your work, can I come for a couple of days and just be around you on set? I feel like that's a really underutilized tool sometimes. And last, but I think incredibly important also, really becoming part of your industry. And again, this is free or very cheap. You want to be seeing shows, attending events, talks, lectures, openings, anything else that keeps your industry ticking, right? You want to go to reception, screenings, launches, you want to have your log line ready and you're going to work the room. You really need to know what's going on in your field so you can really know how you and your work can best fit into that scene. These are the people that you need to be inviting to the screening of your next short film, right? So you want to be able to say, hey, James here. We met at Jeremy O'Harris's panel at the LA Film Festival last year. I was writing today to invite you to blah, blah, blah. It's a kind of professional literacy that is essential in our field, and keeps you connected to not only kind of veteran folks in the industry, but also emerging peers as well. And then, this is a little less personal branding, but I do think it bears repeating again. Balancing all the hats. You need to be able to take care of yourself and keep some gas in your tank, right? Or else you're going to burn out. Freelance burnout is beyond real, folks. I've experienced it. Everyone I know has experienced it. We were just talking about how it happens on Zoom before we started the lecture, and it is, it's the life and the path we've chosen, but at the same time, the stop and start nature of the field, the kind of manic feeling, especially at the start, that you need to be saying yes to everything, the crazy hours that our industry can keep, and how that can impact relationships. Like, it can be a pretty tough combination. Again, just speaking from experience. So some solutions that I have found can be useful: working out what you need to more than survive. Unsurprisingly, this one is free, but again, very difficult and different for everyone. But I would really encourage everyone to sit down, especially for folks who are still in school as you're graduating. Sit down and make a budget and schedule of what you really need to live properly in a way that's going to make you satisfied. Again, different for everyone. Everyone's going to have their own standards, but misery is really not conducive to a freelance arts career. And once you have that budget, you can figure out what you need to do to make the money. And then once you've figured that out, you know how many hours you have to spend on your personal creative work, and you can start planning. And again, here, I would just really encourage everyone to not let perfect be the enemy of the good. If you end up with 1 hour a day to write or 30 minutes a day to self-tape, then that's what you have. And that is brilliant. And that is a gift, and you can make the most of it. But setting, I think, realistic goals for a way that you actually want to live your life, it puts you in good stead for the type of career that we have elected for. again, in this kind of free but difficult category, being really intentional about the work you're doing for either free or cheap. As it says in our presentation, it might be worth it to shadow a Tony-winning director for 6 weeks for a tiny stipend, but it might not be worth 3 weeks of rehearsal for an indie play that has a $50 paycheck, right? Which is insane, but I truly see those on Playbill and Backstage all the time. Like it's far from untrue, unfortunately. Or the opposite could be true for you. Maybe it's a playwright you went to college with who just signed with a great agent, and this is their last sort of indie piece before they really make it. And in fact, the Tony-winning director was kind of an asshole at the interview, right? Like it's not always that it needs to follow the pattern that you think it might, but just being, or indeed, as it says here, neither of those things might be worth it to you. And in fact, you're not in the mood to work for $50 for 3 weeks or for free, which is super valid too. But what I would say, if you aren't being paid properly, which is hopefully shifting in our field, but I fear not so quickly you folks won't encounter it. Being really intentional, really sure about why you're there, and kind of jumping back again to mentoring. That's the kind of stuff your mentors are going to help you with. The folks, these professors that you email tomorrow that you develop these bonds with, people who you can really trust to not have to be sort of performing success in front of, to really be able to go through and be authentic and be vulnerable and say, what do you think I should do? So I think mentorship can be a big part of this. And as you all know, building a freelance career, it's sort of inherently erratic. There's single days of work that I've been paid months of rent for, and then 2-month rehearsal processes that barely covered my subway card to get to the rehearsal. Both are valid. You just want to be really clear with yourself on what it is you're doing and why you're doing it. I kind of reminds me of the triangle of renting an apartment in New York, and I know from friends, same in LA. Either it's going to be cheap, a good location, or a good apartment. It's probably not going to be all three. It'd be great if it was, but it needs to be at least two. And I feel like that rule kind of counts for freelancing too, right? It either needs to pay you really well and advance your career, or maybe it doesn't pay so well, but it's incredibly professionally satisfying, or it does pay really well, but it doesn't really interest you. Like whichever the combination is, but yeah, intentionality as to why you're there, and understanding your position once you are. And then another kind of free but difficult one, setting up mental health and community check-ins, not necessarily in a formal way, but just for yourself. This took me kind of a number of years to figure out that I needed to do this, finding ways to decompress and validate myself that weren't related to my work. Because I feel like for myself, and I'm sure other folks here can relate to that, so often as artists, our careers and our hobbies are the same thing. And as much as possible, trying not to let that happen and finding a real decompression activity, whether it's horse riding or Scrabble or a book group or whatever the hell it is, like something completely different to what you do in your creative life. And this maybe avoids kind of letting your career define everything about your life, which no matter how much you care about your work is not the healthiest setup in my opinion anyway. And also being a creative or being a freelancer, it can be really lonely and really stressful, and you lack that infrastructure that a traditional workplace gives with happy hours and Christmas parties. Like that's something you're going to be building for yourself. So it's super important to create community in your industry to hold one another accountable for taking care of mental and physical health. And yeah, full transparency, I'm definitely still working on this one, and being able to ask for help. But as the sooner that you accept that it's something you need to do, the sooner you can kind of implement it. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to make that my view of all your lovely faces a little bigger. Do we have any questions so far? All right. Very good. Okay, so that was a kind of a little intro to the whole thing. Now we're going to do some writing together. So with all of that kind of percolating, we're going to we're going to hopefully, you guys are going to write, and hopefully if you're comfortable, I'd love if we could share together, because I feel like we will learn a great deal from one another. And in a way, that's us starting to build a freelance community and a personal brand together right now. So let's take a second to grab paper or pen, or get your document to type, or whatever way of writing makes sense to you. And I'm going to pull up my timer. Okay, great. So to kick us off, we're going to do some language, personal branding, kind of rapid fire writing exercises. So these are designed to kind of get us thinking of how to move through our industries and our careers with clarity and conviction, sure of who we are professionally. So first up, I want everyone to think of 3 words that describe you, your work, your artistry. Okay, so for example, I said the work I make, I hope, is investigative, challenging, and rowdy. So trying to think of words that are active and exciting and dynamic rather than general or generic, right? And definitely don't worry about these being perfect, just get them down. And also I would say, like, don't worry about being pretentious. This is difficult but important part of being a freelancer, and I'd encourage us all to really give our work and ourselves the credit we deserve. So let's take 2 minutes now for 3 words that describe you, your work, and your artistry. And just unmute and give me a shout if you've got any questions. It's just about halfway, 1 minute left on these first 3 folks. All right, folks, if you finish up these last few seconds of your writing now, anybody game for sharing?
I'll share.
Oh, amazing.
So 3 words I chose were investigative, whimsical, and imaginative. Investigative, I kind of don't know if that would describe my work. Like if that would be I don't know, honestly. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like those are really, really strong jump off points because, yeah, again, investigative, I think actually is a great word because it's super active. Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of work do you do?
I do like vectorish drawings, but I use the vector itself to tell the story of someone. So you would have to look into it to be able to figure out what it actually is, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. That's firstly, I'm completely fascinated by that. Sounds amazing. So yeah, investigative, whimsical, and imaginative, you said?
Yes.
I think those are really, really strong jump offs. Investigative feels very active. It feels like your practice has an urgency and an immediacy, which it sounds like it really does. I think whimsical is such an intriguing word, and already the way that you've talked about your work in the 10 seconds we spoke about it, I am very intrigued. So I feel like that brings a certain sense of magic or possibility is what it connotes to me. And then imaginative, I think, is speaking, at least to me, it would make me think of that you were just also a deeply creative person whose practice came from genuine interest and excitement in the world. So I think those are, yeah, really excellent.
Okay, good. I'm glad you took that from
Thank you.
it.
Thank you for sharing first. It can be really hard to do, so thank you. Anyone else want to share?
Sure, I'll go.
Oh, amazing.
Hi, I'm Siobhan.
Hi, Siobhan.
Hi. So I'd say my work is in your face, rooted in research, and visceral.
Amazing. And what's your practice? What's your...
I'm a screenwriter, and I mainly do like genre, like horror, sci-fi sort of stuff.
Amazing. Yeah, super, super exciting language as well. I feel like already from, at least from those three, I get a sense that engaging with your work and you as an artist is going to be really exciting and kind of wild maybe, and I think that that's a really exciting energy to enter a creative space with. It gives me a sense that your work is going to be uncompromising, which is really exciting for me if I was thinking of collaborating with you. And it also, in a sense, I think in a really exciting way, it gives you a kind of professional armor too, because you're talking about your work, but it also, like, I definitely wouldn't fuck with you because like that's, you're like, this is the work you're making. And in your face makes me feel like it's going to be really bold and dynamic, rooted in research. I'm also someone who makes research-based work, so I'm a little bit biased towards that. But I feel like that also suggests to me that it's not just kind of schlock and shock. It's also, it gives me a sense there's an academic element to it. And then visceral kind of speaks for itself. So I feel like that's a really great combination that takes me through. The first one feels like it's going to be something really, really aggressive in a good way and really sort of unapologetic, but it's going to have a very intellectual and clear why, and then I'm going to experience in a way that feels very raw and uncompromising. So I think those are also three really excellent articulations, and thank you for sharing them, Siobhan.
Thanks very much.
Any other takers? It's so much easier when someone else goes first. I hope there'll be like a cascade now after your bravery, Keisha. All right.
I'll go.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so
I'll
much,
go.
Dana.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. My words are feminist, magical, and snarky.
That's amazing, and snarky. And what do you do? What's your area of work?
I write comedy and dramedy television.
Amazing. Well, I love that the first one you went with is feminist too, because I mean, surely in this day and age that shouldn't be thought of as a political position, but it still is like an element that makes me feel like you're really connected to your work. You know, your work is connected to your identity and your experience because you led with that, which is, I think, really exciting. Magical feels like such a kind of transportive word. It makes me feel like the work that you do could be super expansive, and that you're not, and even the fact you said the kind of comedy drama, the amount of genres you already touched on, it makes me feel like you could work on any number of projects with me, because like the magicalness suggests multitudes to me. And snarky, then it felt like such a surprising word of the three, which I loved, because like, you know, it wasn't like you were like feminist, magical, and hope. You were like, no, but also snark, like, you know, it was unexpected, which is great, because as an artist, I'm sure all of us would not be making work that is too neat. And so it just let me know that even though there's magic in it, it's still going to have teeth and it's still going to have grit. So yeah, excellent. Also, I feel like I wish I could give more constructive feedback, but everyone's have been great so far. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Really, really exciting stuff. All right, let's dive into the next one then. And if anyone changes their mind and wants to share, they can let me know. So now this one is a little more kind of esoteric, but stay with me. 3 words that describe your energy as a person, right? So what is the experience of working with you going to be like? What do you bring to the table? For myself, I hope that I'm collaborative, open, and irreverent. So yeah, again, I know this can be really tough to talk about yourself this way, and yeah, it can just be really tough, and I want to acknowledge that. But I really encourage you to power through and give the ego a good massage tonight. So let's take a couple of minutes for 3 words that describe your energy as a person and as a creative. That's us just around halfway on these 3 folks. Brilliant, folks. That's us right around 2 minutes. Before I ask if anyone's willing to share, I've been neglecting the chat, and I see some folks have been putting stuff in here. So jumping back for a moment to the 3 words that describe you, your work. Hermione shared intentional, purposeful, and fulfilling. And Hermione, if you could just put in the chat what your practice or is, just if you want to share. But already I feel like those are 3 super exciting words to me. Also, intentional makes me immediately go to the purpose that you make your work, that you're not just kind of sleepwalking through your creative process, that you come initially from a place of intention suggests to me that your work is going to have, not necessarily meaning it's going to be serious or that it's going to be heavy, but just that it's going to be very sharp. I say purposeful kind of really builds on that. The intention behind it is clear. The purpose it's being made is clear, and fulfilling is actually just like a very beautiful word, to be honest, to hear that part of the reason you make your work is to, water your own creative garden. Like, I think that often creatives are scared of owning up to that, and they feel like there needs to be a greater why, but it actually makes me feel like I really trust you as an artist, and you're a writer, producer, director. Amazing. So that also makes sense that you're often in leadership positions too, and you're often in situations where you're facilitating other people. And so I feel like that I feel like I know a lot about you as a creator and as a facilitator. The only note I would have, like I said, I think these are excellent, is interrogating, and maybe the answer is, shut up, James, they're different. But if there could be, if intentional and purposeful could do the same work, and you could find a third thing, because I think that they are different for sure, but they kind of live in the same world. But again, really strong start. And then Nina, you did it too. I love that. Thrilling, provocative, socially charged. Fantastic. Like, that also feels really clear to me for me, it feels like the first one. I feel like as as the viewer or as the participant in the work, I come very high on your priority list, because the first thing you said felt very outward to me. Like the work I make is going to thrill me, and you write thrillers, so there you go. Kind of sells itself. But fundamentally, yeah, I think that that's also like what someone who's meeting you would want to know, is that your thrillers are thrilling. Like I feel like that is like, that's the kind of the main goal of it. Provocative also is a word that I love. It's on the screen as something I use in a different thing. I feel like it's nice because it's expansive enough to it's not so specific that you're like, it's not like I'm here to annoy or I'm here to prod, because being provocative can be sexy and exciting and dynamic, as well as political or academic. And so I feel like it gives me a sense that there's a kind of a cheekiness to your work, maybe, or a sense of spirit, rebellious spirit about it, which I find really exciting. And I think socially charged socially charged is great. Socially charged, I'm actually going to add that. I feel like that'd be a really useful thing for me to talk about in future lectures, because a lot of folks will say socially engaged or socially conscious, but I love that you use socially charged, because the work, again, active language, there's nothing like active language. It feels like your work then is like a living thing that's charged with a current that relates to our life and to the world. So I think those are also three excellent words. And please, folks, if I'm neglecting the chat, do pop your microphone on, or feel free to pop your microphone on and let me know. Okay, so you also, if you were not paying any attention to what I was saying, you got like 3 extra minutes to write. So I'm sure some people will have to share their 3 words that describe their energy as a person. Any takers? This one's tough. This one's tough because it's hard not to feel like a total whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's tough.
I would go.
Yes.
I'm body. I'm in Germany and it's 3 in the morning. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna put my camera on.
Oh my God, no. No worries.
I just have unlimited, nurturing, and relentless.
Amazing. May I ask what you do or things you do?
Um, I'm a I'm a singer and a writer and an actor. I write one woman shows right now. And I research a subject, I dive in really deep, and then I put it up on stage.
And you said unlimited,
Nurturing,
nurturing, and relentless.
relentless.
Fascinating. Okay, well, firstly, kudos to you for being up at this time in the middle of the night. I feel this one's really going to be a good lecture. And having done a lot of work in Scotland during the pandemic, I've been where you are. So thank you so much. Unlimited, nurturing, and relentless. I think those are really great, because I feel like if I was meeting you, if we were going to work on a project together, and that's how you described yourself, I think like leading with unlimited, it's kind of genius, because inherently what you're saying to me is I choose not to define my creative practice or my personal identity in any way that I'm going to be tied to, because like human beings change all the time, and we have these kind of deep reserves of potential and to go in any direction. And so that would be like a really exciting word to hear. And then nurturing, I think, would give me a sense of, and this kind of moves on to the next one, but I think it's great here too, of your values, right? That part of your creative process is to be nurturing and to create and facilitate a space that is going to be safe and supportive
Yes.
for any collaborators I bring in. And for me and for you, I think that's really exciting and very personal and very kind of, not vulnerable is maybe too strong a word, but like a little bit vulnerable to share. And so immediately I think that I just applaud you for that too. It makes me feel like your art, it sounds like, is also very connected to your experiences and your processing of the world. So I think that's really great. And then I think, yeah, relentless swings in at the end. And it's a little bit of a promise and a little bit of a threat as well, which I love. It makes me feel like, okay, so as a collaborator, you're not going to be pushed around, and you're not going to be compromising. And I feel like it's a great counterbalance to unlimited, because unlimited could mean also vague. And there's something about relentless that makes me be like, oh, it's definitely not the vague version of unlimited. It's endless possibilities, but also a kind of hard fault line. And I feel like that's a really exciting combination. So I think those are great.
Thank you.
Thank you for
That was
sharing.
great feedback. Thanks.
My pleasure. Anyone else? Oh, Nina, you'd put some in the chat. Okay, so Nina put in the chat, open, energetic, driven. Well, immediately open is such a kind of exciting word to hear when you're meeting someone and trying to understand their brand as an artist. Because just to say also, personal branding, really, like ideally, it's just actually who you are, like communicating who you are, like and shaping it. It's not a separate artifice. And so already just in the Zooms we've had, Nina, I have found you to be a very open, easy to talk to person. And so I think it's a great starting line. It's like you're not trying to throw your weight around. You're not trying to create hierarchies. You're not trying to create limitations and boxes. So open immediately is very exciting. Energetic's great. I feel like it's so much juicier than saying hardworking, because whoever is going to be like, I'm a little lazy, like no one is going to admit that, I'm sure, or definitely don't. If you are lazy, you should lie about that in your personal branding. But I feel like energetic feels really exciting because, again, it's more personal to you. It's not just like, I'll slog it out till the bitter end, till the last light fails at the chute. It's like, no, I'll bounce into the process and I'll have a lot of shit to throw at you and a lot of stuff to take, and we'll have like a tennis match. And then, yeah, I feel like driven, and it's interesting looking at them side by side with Barry, did I say that right? I hope. The driven balancing the openness, right? So it's like, don't mistake my openness for like, don't mistake my openness for like a foolishness or a lightness or like an airiness. I'm open because I'm curious, but I'm driven because I give a shit about the work I do and it's going to be up to my standard. And so I feel like, again, it counterbalances. It's like a very active kind of, it makes the open very active, which I think is great. Any last takers for this round before we move to the third of our personal branding rapid fires? Okay, fab. These are great, folks, and you folks are sharing a lot, which is always great as a facilitator as well. All right, so the last round for this one is 3 words that describe your professional values. So kind of in a nutshell, I would say this is the why. Why you do what you do, what helps you navigate your professional choices, what guides your creative practice. I say for me, it's provocative, questioning, nuanced. Those are my professional values. So let's take 2 minutes to do that. And again, any questions you can pop in the chat or just shout out. And I love it, Hermione. We've already got yours in. I'll lead with that in 2 minutes. All right, thanks, folks. That's just around halfway, folks. About a minute to go on these 3. All right, folks, if you finish up your writing now. So we've got 2 in the chat from Hermione and Nina. Let's start with those, and everyone else can pluck up the courage to share. And obviously also if other folks would rather just pop it in the chat too, that's completely fine. Okay, so Hermione, your professional values are cooperative, productive, and profitable. That's great. If someone said that to me at a party, I would absolutely never forget it. And I would absolutely be like, okay, shit, I need to reach out to this person and figure out what makes them tick. And what I think, kind of speaking to my point about your previous round, each of these words so perfectly does something completely different. Like there's no overlap. These are like three beautifully distinct things about working with you. Because of course, cooperative immediately makes me think of a real artistic cohort and a real collective structure. And again, like not hopefully a ton of ego in the room and not a ton of like auteur energy, you know, like genuinely folks like lifting each other up, and like literally a co-op would. And then productive immediately makes me think, okay, that's someone who like cares about output, and someone cares about hitting targets, and someone who's going to do what they say they're going to do, and they're going to hit the points we have to hit in the call sheet, and they're going to make tough calls when they come. And then profitable, I love it. I feel like this is the last great taboo, right? It's just talking about money. I think that like that's great, that the work you make is not just for art's sake. It's not just, it seems to me, in the community space or in the educational space. It's also about making money, and it's about making money for you and your collaborators, which is a super exciting thing. And again, doesn't feel as worthy as saying change the world, but also is both more realistic and more honest. So I think those are all really, really fantastic. And yeah, seriously, well done. All 3 of those tell me something very distinct about you. Nina, you shared excellence, expansiveness, and curiosity. Again, 3, I think, really, really distinct words. Excellence, yeah, speaks for itself. There's a certain like weight to that word too. It's like, it's more than quality. It tells me that you believe in the work you do, and that you know you're good at what you do. And it makes me think that I'm going to have to level up as a collaborator in an exciting way. It makes me feel like I would want to walk into the room and make sure I felt like my contribution was excellent. So it's a little bit intimidating, but I think that's great. It's like, it's not intimidating as in you're putting someone else down. It's intimidating as in you know what you're capable of. Expansiveness is such an interesting word. I think it's such a beautiful word, expansiveness. It's similar to, it makes me think of unlimited in that way, expansiveness, because I feel like, and again, I don't know a ton about your professional career, so it's so useful because this is just what I would get from it, is that the experience of working with you, or the experience of engaging with your work, there's many universes there, and there's the potential for different ways of thinking and different ways of telling stories and different ways of communicating with people. I think expansiveness is a much more interesting word than variety, because there's almost something tactile about it too. I don't know, I just love it. I think expansiveness is great. It really makes me think that there is, not only is your work excellent, but that it's shifting all the time and has the ability to let other folks in. And then yeah, curiosity, I think, is a really lovely ending word too. Excellence, expansiveness, and curiosity, because that's the eternal thing that we all hope to have, I'm sure, as artists and as creatives and as human beings. And it makes me feel like, kind of going back to the idea of filling your tank, like you're going to be somewhat a collaborator who is able to fill their own tank because you're curious about the world, and that's why you tell stories. So that feels like a super clear narrative to me. A couple other folks in the chat I will share with everyone. Dana said inclusive, intentional, and progressive. Intentional. Sorry, I feel like I cannot digest language unless I write it down, so bear with me. Okay, so I feel like inclusive is great. That is a again, in terms of, we were having a lunch meeting and we were talking about a project we're going to work on, and you said it was going to be inclusive. That just sets it throws the gauntlet down in a very clear way. It tells me that you're not interested in telling stories that have already been told, about people we've already seen and about experiences that we've already heard about. It feels to me like it's not just that you want to have diversity. It's like beyond that. It's like you actually want the work to include all kinds of participants in it as you go. So that feels very clear to me, and that feels like a great kind of fault line. Sounds like such a negative expression to me all the time. I know it's not, like a fault line for collaborators to be like, this is non-negotiable. This is going to be an inclusive space. This is going to be a space that facilitates new, exciting, and genuinely diverse ideas and concepts and collaborators. Intentional, I think, kind of links into that. I feel like these three have a really great flow, because if you're going to be inclusive and you're going to facilitate spaces that are radically empathetic and open, the work would be intentional. It'd be kind of like to put people in that position where you've brought them together and you've created a space that it feels to me like it's going to be egalitarian. It makes sense your work would then be intentional and not throwaway. So that really tracks for me. And then progressive, I would just find so exciting. I feel like you're leading with three things that feel like they relate to your work, but almost in a really great way. They tell me more about you. And I feel like that's a great creative forward way to introduce yourself into a space, to be like, yep, my work is, and my values are inclusivity, intentionality, and progressiveness. Then it would just, it would suggest, it does suggest to me somebody who is principled and will stand by their principles, and therefore makes work that is new and fresh and dynamic, because that's what comes from inclusive, intentional, progressive spaces. So I feel like in a really lovely way, this is of the ones so far, just naturally, I feel like I know the most about you, which then allows me to deduce things about your work. So it's like a lovely other example, rather than being like, these are my creative values. I feel like these are both your creative and, I imagine, your human values. And so I think that's a really, very powerful and great trio. And then Siobhan, unflinching, unexpected, unexplored. Well, I love this too, because they all start with un. I feel like this is like you should get this at the bottom of your freaking business card. Like, this should be like your thing. Okay, unflinching, unexpected, unexplored. So yeah, I mean, these are, again, super, super clear. They also build like linguistically. I don't know. I think these are great. Unflinching, it really suggests to me that your work is unapologetic, and it's not about papering over cracks, and it's not about making me comfortable as a viewer or as a collaborator. Unexpected gives the sense to me that, again, I'm going to be experiencing something really new when engaging with your work, and that you have the capacity to surprise me as an audience member, as a collaborator, and also the capacity to kind of surprise yourself, that you're willing to kind of follow your stories where they go, which leads us so beautifully into unexplored. Again, for some reason, that feels, even though it's incredibly strong language, it also feels kind of vulnerable in a way that's really exciting as well, because I feel like you could have said trailblazing, and instead you said unexplored. So I feel included. I feel like, we're like, this is uncharted territory for you and I as collaborators, or for me as someone who's engaging with your work as an audience member or an investor or whatever. Unexplored suggests to me that you are aware of and celebrating life's messy contradictions, rather than being like, I'm going to show you something you've never seen before, and it's going to be really neat and tidy. And I think that would not be unflinching. So I don't know, this feels like a very circular one to me in a good way. They all kind of build upon each other. So I love that. And 3 uns in a row. Bravo. That's great. All right, folks, any last takers for this round before we move on? Okay, great. And thank you so much, folks. Like, sharing this way is really vulnerable, and I don't take it lightly. Okay, so we won't obviously share these, but the next one we're going to do the similar thing for networking. For the first up, we're going to take just looking at the time, let's take 1 minute to think of 3 peer individuals to reach out to. So these are people at your same professional level who you might want to collaborate with or have in your freelance community, or have the ability to get advice or share stories from the trenches. 3 folks who you admire and respect and would want to have on your team, basically. So yeah, 3 peer individuals. Let's take a minute to write those. And we won't share these, as I said, they're just for you to have. Okay, brilliant. And now repeat that again for 3 NYU connections you would want to reach out to. So these could be professors, visiting artists, advisors, kind of just 3 folks you've encountered at your time, past or present, at NYU, who you think should know about you and your work, who might be able to uplift and support your career, and who could offer insight and advice. And I'd say really go for folks, don't necessarily go for the sort of biggest trophy in the cabinet. Go for people you had a real authentic and meaningful connection with, and you respect and learned from. Let's take a minute to do that, and I'll start the timer again. Brilliant. And last up, we're just going to repeat that one more time for 3 professional connections to reach out to. So this could be someone you worked with many years ago and you'd like to reconnect with, a guest speaker who's come to do a session like this one, like someone like that, whose work you admire, and even just an artist or a creative you'd like to take out for coffee and get on their radar. Like, shoot for the stars, but also maybe the stars that are a little closer to Earth. Someone who you think legitimately you could reach and who you're reasonably confident would reply. So let's take a minute for that. Thank you, folks. All right, brilliant. Thank you so much, everyone. So for our last writing exercise of the evening, we're all going to work on drafting a personal log line. So as a reminder, this was mine. Hello, I'm James Clements. I'm a Scottish actor, writer, director, and producer based between New York and the UK. In a nutshell, I find untold stories and I tell them. How are you? So to kind of break this down a little bit more, what is the logline actually made up of? So you want to share your name, James Clements, your professions. I'm an actor, writer, director, and producer. Your location. I'm based between New York and the UK. You can also throw in where you were born, but I would say only if it has meaning for you. So Scottish, this one, it's totally voluntary, but being Scottish is a really important part of my creative and personal identity. And also, cynically, it's a really great conversation starter when I'm here in the US. So if that matters to you, it can be a great detail to throw in if you have a cultural or geographic history that has meaning to you. And then the last component is the toughest one, probably. A kind of one-liner about your career that sort of ties it all together. So in a nutshell, I find untold stories and I tell them. Because for me to try and break down, well, actually, when I act, I have an agent, but when I write, I usually commission myself. And then when I direct, no one's going to be listening by the time I'm done. What do I actually do? I find untold stories and I tell them. So something that's sort of fun and intriguing, but obviously still authentic and accurate and useful for you and the person you're telling. So if this feels clear enough to everyone, I'll leave this up. We're going to take 5 minutes. Yeah, let's do 5 minutes to draft this. I'll let you guys know halfway through. And I really would encourage folks to share this one if they're up for it, because it's a kind of little practice pitch for when you run into David Finkel at an A24 party. You gotta be ready to go. So this will stay up and let's take 5 minutes now. All right, thanks folks. Any questions? I'm here. All right, folks, that's around the halfway point now. Just letting you know. All right, last 20 seconds or so, folks. I'm sure everything you've got is great. So just wrap up where you are. It's only the first draft. All right, folks. So stopping where we are. Yeah, obviously just a reminder, this is the first of many drafts and nothing's set in stone for tonight. I just commend you for diving in either way. Oh, Nina, you shared yours. Brilliant. You can kick us off. I'm Nina Sadowski, an author, educator, and filmmaker raised in New York, but happily transplanted to LA. And in a nutshell, I create opportunities for myself and others. Brilliant. So we have all the ingredients there, right? We get to know your name, your role, where you were born and came from, which I think matters to you, but also where you are now and the fact that that's an active and exciting spot. And then in a nutshell, you create opportunities for yourself and others. I feel like that beautifully bridges your own career with your work as an educator. It makes that really understandable to me. And it makes, yeah, again, it's about making the narrative of your professional life make sense. So I think that's an excellent first one to kick us off with. Megan Wilson shared. You have one little edit below. I see. I'm Megan J. Wilson, and I'm an LA-based film and TV writer originally from Seattle. I write bold action and action comedy about women and people dealing with mental illnesses. Fantastic. Really great again. So we get your name, we get where you're from, which again, I'm guessing must matter to you too, where you are now. And then what's really interesting to me is in a really skillful way, actually, I think in a really sophisticated way, you've combined describing what you do with the one-liner about why you do it, right? Like it's actually connected for you, it seems to me, Megan, which I think is great. So you write bold, so you have a great descriptive word in there, bold action and action comedy about women and people dealing with mental illnesses. I love the specificity of this. I think what we're always trying to hone in on in our personal branding as freelancers and as artists is specificity. And I feel like this is a great example of a sentence that has the capacity to be expansive, because you say women and people. So it's not only women, but it is, I imagine, predominantly women. And that's, I imagine, where your passion lies. So you lead with that, but you give the opportunity for more. And it's similar with action and action/comedy. It seems to me from the order, action is your passion, but you also do comedy. You know what I mean? It feels like there's a specificity and a flexibility, and I feel like a very clear and compelling why. So I think that's great, and thank you for sharing it. Lena. I'm Lena Parodi, and I'm a first-generation Italian writer based in Los Angeles. I write speculative TV shows, features, and novels. Very intriguing. Love it. So we have your name, a first-generation Italian writer, so a little bit about your heritage, a little bit about your background, where you're based. I know that you write speculative TV shows, features, novels. I'm really intrigued by this. I think this is really interesting, and I love the specificity of the different things you write. I like that you didn't just say you were a writer, because that's your main practice. Absolutely no pressure to do this, because if you don't want to turn your mic on, you don't have to, or you can put it in the chat or no. I'm not totally sure what speculative means in this context, but that completely also could be something that I'm missing or not understanding.
Totally, I can clarify. Yeah, I meant in terms of like speculative fiction, like the category that has like sci-fi, fantasy, action, kind of everything in that bucket.
I have never
I mean,
heard
genre
of that.
TV, I guess.
Thank you so much. No, that's super helpful. Okay, well, that is just my ignorance then. I'm sure whoever was at this great party would know, but maybe it's too industry lingo. I guess it depends on the room you're in, right? Because maybe if you're at a big TV convention, going with something like sci-fi for the kind of the people like me, the uneducated people like me, would be great. And when you're in your more specific spaces, using that word would be strong. That'd be my only note. But also, like, it maybe is more commonly known than I would know. but I feel like the layman's term, maybe sci-fi, could be substituted in if you're in a space where you feel it might be helpful. But I think it's really great, and thank you for sharing. Oh yeah, Nina, sci-fi, exactly. Like I think that could be a great layman's version. And then Dana, hi, I'm Dana Brazil Solovli, and I'm an LA-based TV writer who grew up in Chicago. I write feminist comedy and dramedy television that seeks to cure pain through laughter and uses magical realism to examine the human condition. Really, really, really strong. That's great. We know who you are. We know where you're working. We know very clearly in your opening line that you're a TV writer, like, right, not a writer / producer / educate. Like, that doesn't seem to me like the multi-hyphenate doesn't seem to be the thing, which I think is great. I think that's so fantastic, and I'm very envious that you really know what you want to do. I write feminist comedy and dramedy television. So that in itself is also a sentence, right? Like, that is, I learn a lot from that. Like, that could literally be your one-liner, but instead you gave us all this incredible other meat on the sentence, which is brilliant. But you write feminist comedy and dramedy television that seeks to cure pain through laughter. So I feel like that, I just think it's a really beautiful sentence, and a beautiful impulse. Cure pain through laughter and uses magical realism to examine the human condition. So it's funny because I feel like this is a great example of the kind of a great combination of the layman's terms and also the real like passion that you have about your work and the real intention that is behind it. Because I feel like if you pitch this to a certain type of person, they could hear comedy and dramedy television that seeks to cure pain through laughter. And another type of listener could hear feminist comedy and dramedy. And another type of listener could hear magical realism to examine the human condition. And I feel like within your log line, there are so many different ways it could be received and engaged with. So I think excellent work. And thank you for sharing. Oh, Siobhan, I see you here. Okay. I'm Siobhan Gilbert. I'm a screenwriter who splits my time between the US and Ireland. I write visceral genre features filled with details mined from the darkest corners of science and history. Also fantastic. I really also need to write this down. I should encourage other people to read them, their own, because it's part of the pitch, but it's also, you know, we're starting soft. But this is really great, Siobhan. Really, really excellent. I'm Siobhan Gilbert. So you're a screenwriter, and you split your time. You tell us the locations that you're from, and already, like, I find this all the time with Scotland. People are intrigued, I'm sure, already to hear that. I'm sure the first question isn't about your work, but why Ireland? But who gives a shit? If they're engaging in the conversation, you'll get to your work soon enough. I think that's great. I think that's a great pull in. I write visceral genre features, super specific again, which I think is really exciting. Visceral genre features filled with details mined from the darkest corners of science and history. And I feel like what's so great, you've been generous enough to share a lot through the process. What I think Siobhan folks has done so well and is continuing to do so well is it all connects to me. Like everything, like the fact that like visceral has returned so many times, the fact that you mine your research, like you seem to me someone who's like very sure of what they're working on and very sure of why they're doing it. And I just, I'm sure it doesn't always feel that way, but at the end of the day, you've put that out to me, who's a stranger. I feel very clear on who you are as an artist, having read your work tonight. And those are, 2-minute first drafts. So I'm sure they'll only get stronger. But I think this is really specific and personal and intriguing. And so, yeah, I applaud that also. Fantastic. So we've got a few minutes left, and I want to start with just a congratulations. Tonight, we've all begun a freelance journey together. You've started developing language around your personal brand. You've made a list of folks you're going to reach out to starting tomorrow. And now you've drafted a personal log line to say to that person when they meet you for a coffee. So seriously, you're on your way with this, and it was really great work folks shared tonight. And yeah, I'm very grateful that everyone dove into this session head first. We did our sharing. So yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. I don't know, we could do some questions, but also we could just wrap. I don't know what the protocol usually is.
Yeah, I would like to just say that I want to first of all thank you very much, James, for really engaging evening and some great tools. And it was also great. I want to just echo, it was really great for those of you that I don't know from the alumni community who are in LA. Come over, introduce yourselves, get involved. But also I want to pitch that James is going to do a 3-part, more in-depth workshop, getting into more of the granular nature. This was sort of a taste, and we will, since you all came today, we will send you information about that. It will also, be another free event, but more in depth. So you'll definitely get information from that as we go. But I just wanted to say thank you, James. And I know, does anyone have any questions for James before we let him loose? No. All right. Yeah, so Gracie dropped in the chat if you'd like to learn more about NYU LA and the great things we have going on here, like these professional development classes. Email egc254@nyu.edu. That's Gracie's email. She'll put you on our priority list so that you'll hear about things early and keep you informed. We have a mentorship program. We have many other things that and many alumni facing events too that will be valuable for you guys. We have a registry, opt-in registry for alumni in LA, networking registry, other things. We're happy to hook you up. But thank you so much, James. I really enjoyed this and I look forward to your longer presentation.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Nina and Gracie, and thank you all for coming and being vulnerable and sharing. Thank you.
Hey everyone, be well. Avoid COVID.